Millionaire fakes illness to test his girlfriend, but it's the cook who takes care of him. Richard Bennett was breaking down in tears of anger and disappointment as he adjusted the neck brace around his neck. The 52-year-old businessman had made the riskiest decision of his life after overhearing a conversation he shouldn't have heard. That's when he decided to pretend he had been in a serious car accident. Richard put on the neck brace he had bought at a medical supply store and sat in the borrowed wheelchair, determined to find out if Brittany, his girlfriend 20 years his junior, truly loved him or just his money. "Richard, my love, what happened?" shouted Brittany as she rushed into the mansion in Bel Air, Los Angeles. He watched her closely, looking for signs of genuine concern in her blue eyes. Brittany approached the wheelchair, her blonde hair swaying as she walked in her high heels. "I had a terrible accident, Brittany. The doctors said I'll be like this for several months, maybe longer," lied Richard, forcing an expression of pain. To his surprise and horror, Brittany started laughing. "Really? You're joking with me, right?" she said, pointing her finger at him. "What a ridiculous situation. Can you imagine me explaining to the girls at the salon that my boyfriend turned into a broken old man?" Richard felt his heart race, not because of the charade, but because of the cruelty in Brittany's words. "Brittany, I need you now more than ever," he whispered. "Oh, Richard, not today. I have a nail appointment at 3, and then there's that party at Ashley's. You understand, right?" she replied, already grabbing her Michael Kors purse. "Emily should be able to help you with whatever you need." And she walked out the door, leaving only her expensive perfume in the air. Emily Peterson, the cook who had been working in the house for only 3 months, had watched the whole scene from the kitchen door. She approached slowly, her hands still wet from washing the dishes. "Mr. Richard, do you need anything?" she asked in a soft voice. Richard looked at her carefully for the first time. Emily was about 45 years old, with dark hair tied in a simple bun, and wore the purple uniform with a white apron that he himself had chosen for the staff. Her brown eyes showed a genuine concern that he hadn't seen in Brittany. "I think just a glass of water, Emily. Thank you." "Let me take you to the living room. This hallway is too cold," she said, positioning herself behind the wheelchair. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Brittany appeared less and less at the mansion. When she did come, she always had some excuse not to stay long. Emily, on the other hand, naturally took over Richard's care. She prepared special meals, helped him move around the house, and always asked if he was comfortable. "Emily, you don't have to do all this. I can hire a nurse," said Richard one afternoon, watching her prepare tea. "You're being well taken care of, aren't you?" she replied with a shy smile. "Besides, I learned a lot taking care of my mother when she got sick." Richard felt a tightness in his chest, not because of the charade he had created, but because of the simple kindness of this woman. A week later, Brittany showed up at the mansion with 3 friends, all wearing expensive bikinis and carrying beach towels. "Hi, honey. I came to use the pool with the girls. You don't mind, do you?" said Brittany, barely looking at him. "Of course not," Richard replied, feeling increasingly invisible. He watched from the bedroom window as the 4 women enjoyed themselves by the pool area. The sound of laughter reached him, but it was the words he heard that made him angry. "You guys just look at this situation. I'm dating a millionaire and he turns into an invalid," said Brittany, provoking laughter from her friends. "At least you have the whole house to yourself," one of them replied. "That's true, and the money too. He can barely sign a check properly with that shaky hand," Brittany said, making exaggerated gestures. Richard felt the urge to get up from his chair and confront her right then. That's when he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Richard, I brought you some fresh orange juice," said Emily, placing the tray on a nearby table. "Emily, did you hear what she said?" "Yes, sir, I did. But you told me not to get involved, remember?" Richard had indeed asked her to. He wanted to see how far Brittany's cruelty would go, but he hadn't imagined it would hurt this much. "I think I've seen enough," he murmured. "Are you sure, sir?" Emily had noticed something strange since the first day. Richard forgot to pretend he was in pain when he thought no one was watching. Once, She caught him moving his supposedly injured hand perfectly, but she decided not to confront him. There was something in his eyes that screamed loneliness, and that was real, regardless of the charade. 2 days later, Dr. William Morris, the private physician for the Bennett family for over 15 years, showed up for a routine checkup. "Richard, I need to examine your injuries more closely. I'm going to prescribe some stronger pain medication," said the doctor, unaware of the act. "Doctor, I don't think that's necessary." "Nonsense. You look very pale. These medications will help with the inflammation too." Richard couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. Dr. William prescribed powerful painkillers that really left Richard debilitated for the next few days. The charade had become more real than he had planned. Emily started sleeping in the guest room next to the master bedroom, in case Richard needed help during the night. "Emily, you don't have to do this. You're already doing too much for me," he said one early morning when she appeared with tea to help him sleep. "Everyone deserves kindness when they're going through a tough time, Mr. Richard," she replied, adjusting the pillows. "And besides, I know you're not as hurt as you want me to believe." Richard froze. "What do you mean? Yesterday morning I saw you grabbing that book from the high shelf without any difficulty, and your hands don't shake when you think no one is looking." "Emily, I can explain. You don't owe me any explanation. I just want you to know that, whether you're pretending or not, everyone deserves to be cared for with kindness." Richard fell silent, ashamed. Emily had discovered his charade, but she kept taking care of him anyway. The next morning, Brittany showed up accompanied by a tall, well-dressed man. "Richard, I want to introduce you to my brother, Dr. Jason Miller," she said with a forced smile. The man approached the wheelchair and started examining Richard without permission. Interesting. I think it would be best to admit you to a specialized clinic, Richard. I have the perfect place in mind." Richard immediately became suspicious. Brittany had never mentioned having a doctor brother. "I don't think that's necessary. I'm being well taken care of here at home." "But honey, Jason understands these things much better than the maid," insisted Brittany. Emily, who was serving coffee in the living room, purposely dropped the tray, making a deafening noise. "Sorry, how clumsy of me," she exclaimed, kneeling to pick up the pieces. The distraction gave Richard time to process what was happening. That man wasn't a real doctor, he was sure of it. "Brittany, I need to think more about this hospitalization." "Of course, honey. But don't take too long. The sooner you get better, the better for all of us," she said, exchanging a strange look with her supposed brother. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. That afternoon, Emily was cleaning the living room when she overheard a conversation between Brittany and that Dr. Jason in the garden. She discreetly picked up her phone and started recording. "Jason, we need to be quick. If he finds out we've been together for 6 months, we lose everything," Brittany was saying. "Relax, my love. Once he's admitted, I'll forge some medical reports saying he's mentally incompetent. Then you sign a power of attorney and take everything. And after that, we disappear from here and go enjoy the inheritance in Las Vegas, just as we planned." Emily felt her blood run cold. Those two were plotting something terrible against Richard. She saved the audio and ran to his room. "Mr. Richard, you need to hear something," she said, showing him the phone. When Richard heard the recording, his eyes filled with tears, not from physical pain but from a deep pain in his soul. The woman he loved was planning to rob him along with her lover. "Emily, what do I do now? You stop this charade and face the situation head-on, or you accept being a real victim of these two. You're right, but I need more evidence before confronting them." In the following days, Richard pretended to accept the idea of being hospitalized. Brittany was ecstatic and started bringing papers for him to sign, claiming they were medical authorizations. "My love, you just need to sign these documents here," she said one afternoon, placing several papers in front of him. Richard took the papers and pretended to read them with difficulty. "Brittany, my vision is still blurry because of the medication. Can you explain what each document is?" "It's just hospital paperwork, Richard. Authorization for treatment, those boring things." But Richard saw that they were powers of attorney that would give Brittany complete access to his bank accounts and properties. He signed fake documents that Emily had prepared, which looked like the originals. That same night, Brittany organized a dinner to celebrate Richard's improvement before the hospitalization. She invited several people, including Dr. William, the family's real doctor. During dinner, Brittany was oddly excited, serving expensive wine to all the guests. "A toast to my dear Richard, who will soon be fully recovered," she said, raising her glass. Dr. William was confused. "But Brittany, Richard still needs several weeks of treatment. Hospitalization might even hinder the recovery process." "Dr. Jason said it's for the best," she replied quickly. "Dr. Jason? Who is this colleague? I'd like to speak with him about the case." Brittany began to stammer, clearly nervous. It was then that Richard decided it was time to act. "Dr. William, there's something I need to say," Richard began. Brittany spilled wine on her dress on purpose. "Oh, what a disaster! I need to change my clothes," she said, running out of the room. Richard realized she was trying to avoid the conversation. He looked at Emily, who was serving dessert, and gave a discreet signal. It was time to reveal everything. "Dr. William, my friends, I need to confess something important," said Richard, still sitting in his wheelchair. "I didn't have any accident. I pretended to be injured to test if Brittany really loved me." Silence fell over the room. The guests looked at each other, not understanding. "Richard, what are you talking about?" asked his partner, Michael Thompson. "I found out she's plotting to steal everything I have along with a man who's pretending to be a doctor," Richard continued, asking Emily to bring the phone with the recording. When everyone heard the audio, there was a general uproar. Dr. William was outraged that someone was pretending to be a doctor, and Michael wanted to call the police immediately. Brittany came running down the stairs when she heard the noise. "What's going on here?" "It's over, Brittany. I found out everything about you and Jason," said Richard, finally getting up from the wheelchair. Brittany's eyes widened as she saw him walking normally. You were faking it all along? Just like you were faking loving me." "Richard, I can explain everything." "No need. Emily recorded your conversation in the garden." Brittany looked at Emily with hatred. "You nosy little maid. You had no right to interfere." "Yes, I did. I won't stay quiet while someone I care about is being robbed," Emily replied courageously. "Richard, please give me a chance to explain," begged Brittany. "The only explanation I want is where Jason is. You two are going to return everything you tried to steal." "I didn't steal anything. I just signed some papers you authorized me to." Richard showed the fake documents she had signed. "These papers, they're worthless. They're copies that Emily prepared." Brittany realized she had fallen into a trap. Furious, she started screaming and breaking objects in the room. Dr. William called the security of the condominium, and Brittany was escorted out of the mansion. Days later, Richard found out that Jason had fled the city when he realized the plan had failed. Brittany tried to sue Richard for emotional damages, but the evidence against her was undeniable. Richard was alone in the mansion, reflecting on everything that had happened. The farce had revealed things he didn't want to know, but it had also shown something he didn't expect to find. "Emily, I want to thank you for everything," he said one morning, finding her preparing coffee in the kitchen. "No need to thank me, Mr. Richard. I just did what I thought was right. Why did you keep taking care of me even knowing I was faking?" Emily stopped stirring the coffee and looked him directly in the eyes. "Because I realized that, even though you were pretending to be hurt, you were truly in need of care. Loneliness hurts more than any accident." Richard felt his eyes welling up. Emily had seen through the farce and seen his real pain. "Emily, I want to make you a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "I want to open a restaurant, a place where people like you can show their culinary talent. Would you be my partner?" Emily was silent for a moment, processing the offer. "Mr. Richard, I don't want anything out of pity or gratitude. It's not pity, it's recognition. You have a gift in the kitchen, and I have resources. Together we can create something special." "And what will become of us, I mean of you and me?" Richard slowly approached her. "I want to discover that little by little, if you give me a chance. But one thing I promise. No more pretending between us, ever again." Emily smiled for the first time since she had started working at the mansion. "All right, but on one condition. The restaurant will serve real food for real people, not those expensive dishes that don't satisfy anyone. Deal. 6 months later, Richard and Emily opened Heartfelt Kitchen, a restaurant in downtown Los Angeles that served home-cooked meals at fair prices. The place quickly became famous in the area, not just for the delicious food, but for the love story that had been born there. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Richard had learned that faking an illness to test someone's love was the most foolish and wisest decision he had ever made. Foolish because it almost cost him his dignity and his fortune. Wise because it led him to Emily, the woman who loved him at his worst, even knowing it was all pretend. On the opening day of the restaurant, Richard gave an emotional speech to the customers filling the establishment. This place was born from a lesson I learned the hardest way possible. I learned that true love doesn't show itself in moments of glory, but in moments of vulnerability. And I learned that sometimes the most important people in our lives are right in front of us, preparing our food, taking care of our home, offering affection without asking for anything in return. He looked at Emily, who was commanding the kitchen with mastery, coordinating a team of young chefs she had personally trained. That's why I want to announce that I'm not just sharing this business with Emily Peterson, but also my life. She agreed to marry me on one condition, that I never again pretend to be someone I'm not. Applause echoed through the restaurant. Emily came out of the kitchen, taking off her apron, and approached Richard. He knelt before all the customers and offered a simple ring, but with a diamond that sparkled as much as her eyes. "Emily Peterson, will you marry me?" "I will, Richard Bennett, but only if you promise we'll face everything together without lies." "I promise." Their kiss was applauded by all the patrons. Here was a couple who had found true love in the most unlikely way possible. Brittany showed up at the restaurant a few months later, trying to cause a scene. But the neighborhood people, who already knew Richard and Emily's story, threw her out. She had lost not only the money she tried to steal, but also the chance to experience true love. Richard never felt the need to test Emily's love again. He saw it daily in the way she prepared his breakfast, in how she cared for the restaurant staff, in the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. Heartfelt Kitchen became a success not only culinary but social. Richard and Emily created a program where they offered free meals to people in vulnerable situations. Every Friday, the restaurant opened its doors to those who couldn't pay, maintaining the same quality and care in service. "Richard, sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't faked that illness," said Emily one night as they were closing the restaurant. "Probably I'd still be being deceived by Brittany, and you'd still be looking for a job where you'd be respected. It's strange to think that a lie brought us to the truth. The lie revealed the truth. It showed who really cared about me." Richard hugged Emily from behind as she organized the last dishes of the night. "Do you regret anything? Faking the illness? Sometimes it was cowardly of me, but I don't regret where it brought us. And I don't regret taking care of you, even knowing you were pretending. Why did you do it, Emily? Why did you take care of me knowing it was a lie?" "Because I realized the illness was fake, but the pain was real. You were truly suffering, Richard. The loneliness was slowly killing you." Richard turned to look her in the eyes. "You saved me, Emily, in a way I didn't even know I needed saving. And you gave me a chance to show that I was more than just a simple cook. You gave me the opportunity to be your true partner." The couple married in a simple ceremony held at the restaurant itself, with all employees and regular customers present. Richard had insisted on something small and intimate, the opposite of everything his previous life with Brittany had represented. "Richard, are you sure you don't want something bigger?" asked Emily during the preparations. "Emily, I've learned that the most important things in life are simple. A well-seasoned dish, a word of affection, sincere care. I don't need a big party to celebrate our love." The ceremony was performed by the local community priest who had become a regular at the restaurant. Richard cried during the vows, not from sadness, but from gratitude for having found someone who loved him for who he truly was. "Emily, I promise to never again pretend to be someone I'm not. I promise to love you on the easy days and the hard ones. I promise to be your true companion in every sense of the word. Richard, I promise to keep taking care of you, not because you need it, but because I want to. I promise to be your partner in business and in life, and I promise to always serve your coffee just the way you like it, every morning. They both laughed at the last promise, which got laughs from all the guests. The honeymoon was spent at the restaurant itself, creating new dishes together and planning expansions to help even more people in the community. This was exactly how they wanted to start their married life, working side by side, building something meaningful together. 1 year after the wedding, Heartfelt Kitchen had become a reference not only for its food, but for its social business model. Richard and Emily were invited to speak at universities about entrepreneurship with a social purpose. How do you balance profit with social responsibility? A student asked during a lecture. We found that when you truly care for people, profit comes naturally, replied Emily. And that money only has value when it's used to create something that improves the lives of others, Richard added. During an interview for a local television show, the host asked about the origin of their relationship. Richard, is it true that you met when you pretended to be sick? It's true. It was the most cowardly and the smartest thing I've ever done in my life. How so? Cowardly because I didn't have the courage to see the truth about my previous relationship. Smart because it led me to Emily. And you, Emily, how did you react when you found out he was pretending? I kept taking care of him just the same. I realized he was truly hurt, just not physically. What would you say to people going through similar situations? That true love doesn't need a test, answered Emily. It shows itself naturally in everyday life in the small gestures. And that sometimes the most important people in our lives are those who are closest, but we don't see them because we're looking in the wrong place, Richard added. Richard and Emily's story spread through social media, inspiring others to value relationships based on genuine care instead of material interest. Brittany tried to contact Richard a few times, claiming she was sorry, but he never responded. He had learned that some people come into our lives to teach us what we don't want, and that has value too. Richard, do you feel angry at Brittany? Emily asked one night. Not anymore. In fact, I'm even grateful to her. Grateful? How so? If she hadn't shown her true colors, I never would have valued your affection. Sometimes we need to know the false to recognize the true. You're very wise for someone who pretended to be in a wheelchair to test a girlfriend, Emily teased. And you're very good for someone who took care of a man she knew was lying. Maybe we're perfect for each other, precisely because of our imperfections. Richard hugged his wife, looking out the window of the apartment they had bought near the restaurant. It was a simple place, but full of true love. Emily, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. What? When was it that you realized you were falling in love with me? On the third day when you said thank you after I fixed your pillows. It wasn't just the words, it was the way you said them. I realized you weren't used to genuine care, and I fell in love with you when I saw you had discovered my deception, but still treated me with tenderness. No one had ever done that for me. Not even in my best moments or my worst. Not even in your best, because they were all fake. And you took care of me during what I thought was my worst moment. The conversation was interrupted by a phone call. It was Michael, Richard's business partner, with a proposal to franchise Heartfelt Kitchen to other cities. Richard, many people want to open restaurants just like yours in other cities. What do you think? Richard looked at Emily, who nodded positively. Michael, we'll only agree if we can guarantee the new restaurants will maintain the same social commitment. We don't want it to become just another fast food chain. Of course. You can create a code of conduct and personally oversee each opening. And so the Heartfelt Kitchen chain was born, always committed to serving quality food at fair prices and offering free meals to those in need. 5 years after the wheelchair deception, Richard and Emily inaugurated the 20th restaurant in the chain in Miami, Florida. During the ceremony, Richard gave a speech that moved everyone. 5 years ago, I was lost in a life full of luxury but empty of love. I pretended to be sick to discover who truly cared about me. I found that true love was preparing my food every day, taking care of my home, offering affection without asking for anything in return. He held Emily's hand. This restaurant chain exists because we believe everyone deserves good food, regardless of what's in their pocket, and everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and kindness. Our story began with a lie, but it turned into the most beautiful truth of our lives. It shows that sometimes crooked paths lead us to the right destinations. Emily took the microphone. Richard, thank you for teaching me that I deserved more than just a job. Thank you for showing me I could be your true partner. And thank you for giving me the chance to take care of you, even when you didn't need physical care but emotional care. The couple kissed, applauded by everyone present. There were two hearts that had found in mutual care the perfect recipe for true love. That night, lying in their hotel bed in Miami, Richard and Emily talked about the future. Emily, can you imagine where we would be if things had been different? You'd probably still be fooled by gold-digging women, and I'd still be looking for a job where I was valued. Sometimes I think fate has a very strange sense of humor. Or maybe fate knows exactly what it's doing. Richard turned to look at his wife. Are you happy, Emily? Happier than I ever imagined I could be. And you? I discovered happiness has nothing to do with how much money you have, but with who is by your side to share life. And I discovered true love is what shows up in the moments you need it most, even if you don't know you need it. The two fell asleep, embracing, grateful for a deception that had revealed the greatest truth of their lives, that true love always finds a way to flourish, even in the most unlikely situations. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you think Richard did the right thing by pretending to be sick? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.